There's some potential for biofuels to help the world, but the amount of biofuels that can be produced without reducing food consumption or increasing greenhouse emissions has been greatly overestimated. The basic reason is that when people have looked at biofuels in the past, they've essentially assumed that land is free, that if we divert land from producing food or producing grass for livestock or producing trees, that the carbon that will grow on plants that we use for biofuels somehow is automatically beneficial, and that carbon that plants absorb offsets the carbon that's released when the biofuels are burned in a car. The problem, of course, is that if you're using land to make plants for biofuels, you're not using that land to make plants for other purposes. If that land would otherwise be producing trees, it would be absorbing carbon and helping to hold down global warming. And if we give up that carbon absorption, then we don't necessarily get any benefit from using the land for biofuels. If that land's producing food, it's not directly reducing greenhouse gas emissions for the simple reason that people eat it or livestock eat the food. But since it's important that people continue to eat, they're going to have to go somewhere else to get the same amount of food and the same amount of carbon. And that means they're going to have to go into other lands and clear those lands in order to be able to keep eating, and that will release more carbon. So the real question for biofuels when we use land is what conversion of land to producing biofuels is likely to help us and what is likely to hurt us. And there's a pretty good general rule, which is if the land is reasonably productive of plants today relative to its rainfall and other conditions, it's probably not a good idea to convert it to biofuels because it's already producing a lot of plants that are helping us. If the land is degraded but gets enough rainfall that we could produce a lot of biomass for biofuels, then that's something we should think about doing. There are other kinds of biomass feedstocks we might be able to use too, such as some crop residues if they're not already being used. But again, we have to remember that a lot of crop residues are fed to livestock and are producing food, and if we divert that, we still have to make the food. One of the areas that people tend to target is grazing land, and that's because grazing land statistics don't tend to show up too well in international counts of agriculture. But grazing land isn't free either. It's producing food, it's producing a lot of biodiversity, and it's a livelihood for lots of people. So all of that means that land is tight, and the only biofuels that are likely really to give us net gains are those if we can find really underutilized land for some reason or other and generate and make it very productive for biofuels.